They walk in that room, they become yours. And you got this energy inside your soul that says, I am the number one determinant of the success or failure of my students. Hey, y'all, when you get back, kick some butt. I'll see you in the winner's circle celebrating your victory. Let's go. 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 Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you, everybody.
And we are live. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to week 173 of the AP and New Principals Academy. Let me see who we got here this morning. We got Dr. Rella Hicks in the building. My man Ricardo Yanis is in the building out there in Texas. Rodney Richardson's here. Marsha Poe out there in San Diego. Yeah. You know, Marsha, I thought about you with that hurricane. A hurricane on the West Coast. That is so unusual, right? So taking a break from hurricane prep. Just be careful out there. You know, I think it's supposed to lose intensity by the time it gets to you, but but still it's a hurricane. We got Grace Castaneda in the building. Takesha High, Arcella Austri, Michael Benton, Portia Ajigbo. We got my man Zarek, DJ Rock Lake in the building. I was with him the other day. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Joshua Emulus Brooks is in the building. Donna Medina Sherrigant's in the building. Arcella Austri. We got Principal Sherrod Laws in the building. He's out there at football practice with his young one. Rashard Davis in the building. Dana Hassinger Coho. I know I messed that up, Dana. Blame it on my just not knowing your name. Principal Tammy Taylor, or might I say Dr. Tammy Taylor, part of the team of Create and Educate every Saturday morning, Facebook Live, 10:30. But they also on the road. They were out there, I think, Michigan Central, rocking the house with that information last week. We got Scott Wiley in the building, Chester WV. Darnell McElveen, hotep to you. That Principal Dot McKeever Jeter, Armand R. Peterson, D. Gaines. Let's see. Oh, there's the queen of my castle. My wife, Kimberly Broughton Kafele in the building. Lakeisha Mabry, Andra Smith Morris, Jocelyn Nelson. Oh, man, this thing jumped. Where we at, Vanessa? I saw your name. There we go. Vanessa Zeskin's in the building. Hit that share button, y'all, as you come in. Hit the retweet. Let them know we are here. We're here with an important topic, too, y'all. You need to let somebody know. You might want to tag somebody. We're talking instruction today. That's all we talking. We're talking instruction. We're talking learning grounds. We're talking instructional leadership. Hit that share button. Hit that retweet button. And y'all know, by the way, I'll be talking about this more in a minute when I finish the shout outs, but I ain't gonna be saying too much more to hit that share button and retweet, because we getting ready to consolidate right to YouTube, man. I'm too spread out, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Then we got Jacqueline Harriet in the building. Marie Dominique Dumerville is in the building down there in where the heck was I, man? In Broward County, Florida. We got Melissa Jones Chunu. Janie Smith in the building. There's the other doctor, the leadership doctors. Sheikah Houston in the building. Her and the other doctor down there and up there in Michigan, bringing that information, man. Big time. Val Foster in the building. Jamal Littles is in the building. Good morning to you, brother Jamal. We got Tommy Vincent Hilliard in the building. Golf RWT, Sonia Jackson is in the building. Monica Marine Gordon's in the building. Stacy, Joseph, Christopher, Ellie, Crystal, Nolan, Brandon. I'm getting ready to get it started. Kimberly Carruthers. I haven't seen your name in a while. Kimberly, where you been and how you been? I hope everything is good. We got my man, Michael Moore. That's fam, man. Hey, Mike, man, every time I come to North Carolina, I'm like, man, I need to reach out to this brother. But hey, Mike, I was just telling somebody today, I'm in and out, man. I come to a place, I drive to the hotel, I speak, and I bounce. I'm off to the airport to the next place. So it's hard to see people that I know in these various different cities and states, but we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen somehow. Lily Lanier, Asia Burnett, Sean Hurt, man, he was rocking today. Sean Hurt, 10 o'clock every Saturday morning. Facebook Live, don't miss him, right? Don't miss him. Facebook Live. I don't see Josh, but Josh Tovar, MPA Jaguars, he's out there with his son on the football field too, but that's every Sunday night at 7 o'clock. Facebook Live, that's all Eastern time, y'all, Eastern time. I'm almost, your mom's there. Hey, how you doing? Kathy Moore in the building. Good to see you virtually. Let me see. Can I see you? I see you. We got ARP in the building. And by the way, y'all, like I said, Kathy Moore in the building. I might as well say, Kathy Moore. That's the daughter of Katherine Johnson. The big time Katherine Johnson, the one that y'all all heard of with NASA. That's her daughter. I was saying, I see you. And then that's her grandson, Michael Moore, right? So that Katherine Johnson, if you don't know Katherine Johnson, you've been under a rock for a little bit too long, right? So you go to Google and search up Katherine Johnson, man, and learn who she was and the significant contributions that she made as it relates to space travel and NASA, right? And African American. Let's make sure we say that part too, right? So Ronald Pugh is in the building. Look here, y'all. It's 11:03. Let me get it going. Muriel, no nonsense. I'm gonna end with Muriel. Matter of fact, I see Lou Saunders. Let me end with Lou Saunders. But then again, I see Jasmine Harris. Man, she's a regular, man. So Jasmine Harris, always good to see you. It's a lot of y'all regulars popping up here. I see Roz Gaskins under the Village Leadership Group. So all y'all regulars, Mike Williams, I see you. Mia Bell Stevens, I see you. Lysandra Brackens, I see you. So I can't call all of y'all, right? Carolina, Melina, Robinson. I'm going to stop it right there. I see you, Sharice Ayers. That's it, y'all. Listen, no more shout outs. Let me say to each and every one of you formally now, good morning. Y'all see, I got energy this morning, man. Greetings. Welcome to week 173. Woo! Y'all hear that? 173 of the AP and New Principals Academy. I know somebody on here, you ain't been with me for a while. You said, what did you say? The AP and New Principal Academy? What happened? We ain't the virtual AP Leadership Academy anymore, y'all. It's too many people watching this thing. I mean, I'm just gonna put it out there the way I received it. Don't say, man, he bragging, but no, it's so many people on here that have become new principals. They reach out to me. They see me at the conferences. They send me emails, DMs. Man, that academy got me a principal job. I used to watch you every Saturday. I'm like, hold up. Pump the brakes. You used to watch. Well, I'm a principal now. I'm not an AP anymore. So, I moved on to other things. Oh, let me rebrand like on the spot. And that's what happened. I mean, I sat down at the conference convention center and rebranded. We the AP and New Principals, because them folks with new principals, they thought they didn't need this anymore. Are you kidding me? As a new principal, you need this more than you did as an AP. With the high-powered guests that I bring on, and when I drop some solo nuggets, right? So we the AP and New Principals Academy. And let me tell you how I'm defining new principals. Not 1 year, not just 1 year, not just 2 years, not just 3 years, not just 4 years, but 5 years, 1 to 5. If you in your 5th year, as far as I'm concerned, you new. You still new. So we the AP and New Principals Academy, but let me keep going. Hey, somebody, got that same question to ask every Saturday morning. How you feeling? Yeah, and I'm extremely sincere when I ask that question. How are you feeling? You feeling good? It's a new year. Some of y'all been back a week or 2, 3 weeks. Others, you going back next week. Others, you going back in September. How you feeling? I'm gonna tell you something. If you're not feeling good, that's not a bad thing. It's normal. It's human, right? But I am gonna say that you got to work on that. You may have to talk to somebody. You may have to reassess you. You may have to reevaluate your leadership. There are things you may have to do to get you to where you need to be. Because when you're talking about leadership and you're talking about young people are following you, that are looking up to you, right? Adults, whether it be certificated staff or whomever, who are following you, who are looking up to you, who are relying on your guidance, your leadership, right? Then there's something got to be inside of you. Something is churning inside your spirit. Something is churning inside your soul that when you walk into that building, you got this feeling, you got this energy, you got this excitement, you got this enthusiasm, you got this passion that says, I'm on fire! Woo! Woo! See that? That's got to be there despite it all. Because of this desire to see the young people soar, this desire to see the teachers teaching at the highest possible level. Well, it begins with your leadership, the energy, the excitement, the enthusiasm, the passion that you bring to your work. Hit me with them fire emojis like you've been doing, man. I see them. I see him. If you on fire, hit me with that fire, man. Let me see that, man. Let me see that. Let me see that. You know, hey, y'all, I got a couple of announcements, and I'm gonna move my monologue down to when I'm getting ready to bring my guest up. But I got a couple things here. Number one, the ASCD Leadership Conference. Y'all, you know, I'm the opening keynote. ASCD Leadership Conference in Grapevine, Texas. You don't want to miss that, but they blessed me. I'm the opening keynote. I think this is the 3rd or 4th time I opened keynote for this particular conference. So come on down, register, go to ascd.org, register for the conference. Meet me in Grapevine, October 13. I'm bringing the fun. Not only am I bringing the fire, I'm bringing the thunder, I'm bringing the lightning, and obviously I'm bringing the information. So that's October 13, Grapevine, Texas, the ASCD Leadership Summit. Yours truly, the opening keynote speaker. I want to see you in the building. Be there, right? So that's that. Let me real quick shout out to Scarborough, Maine leadership teams. Man, we had a day, man. I was up there Tuesday. Scarborough, Maine. Shout out to them. We had a powerful day. And then I went on to Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. This was a day that this was like one of the high points of my summer down in Winston-Salem. I spoke to new teacher mentors. So the mentors of new teachers for 3 hours, man, that was special. And then in the afternoon, I spoke to the new teachers. So these are first year teachers, man. Oh man, I know they weren't expecting to hear some of what I said, but you know, that's what it was. If any of you are in this on the platform this morning, part of the fam now, shout out to you. And then I closed out my week. You know, I don't do 5 days a week in the summer no more. I used to. This is the first year that I acknowledge my age, right? I mean, I ain't no old man. I ain't 70 something. I'm 62, but I was doing 5 cities, 5 states a week, every week in August for 11 years. This 12th year, I said, nah, we ain't doing that. I'm doing 3 days and then I'm going to bounce back to Newark, right? Airport. I live in Jersey City. So 3 days and I'm out, right? So that's what I've been doing. In the last week of August, I'm doing 4, but 3 of them are in Connecticut, right? And then 1 in Maine. So I said, okay, I'll squeeze out a 4th. But you know, but that's what, 5 days every week for the past 11 years. I said, not this year, 3 and I'm out. So I turned down so much business this year, but that's okay. You know, we'll do it at another time. So shout out to the last one I spoke with, Southfield Public Schools district leadership team up in Michigan on Thursday. Man, we had a day, man. I know some of them are on here because I saw their names. Zarek, I see you, my brother, Zarek Lake. Man, we had a day. Oh, Ankrum, yeah, I see you, man. I see you. Hey, Ray Ankrum, on a sidebar, bring back the 8 black hands, man. What are y'all doing? Hey, Ray Ankrum, do you realize that was my daggone cup of coffee to launch my week? You tell Sharif, you tell Chris, and maybe even Charles, I need my 8 black hands on Sunday night at 9 o'clock. That thing launched me, man. I'm telling you, my wife can tell you, I need 8 black hands on Sunday night, Ray Ankrum. Bring that back, man. So y'all, some of y'all like, what's he talking about? Don't worry about it. It's a podcast that ain't on no more. And obviously I need it back on, right? So bring that back, Ray. I need it. I told Sharif the same thing. I told him, y'all had the baddest podcast on Facebook. And then you disappeared like abruptly, like left, like divorced everybody. Bring that thing back, man. Record this and send it to the brothers. Say, man, Kafele went in this morning, man. All right, y'all. Look, to the first timers, welcome. Since it's your first time, you missed 172 sessions. So now you need to go to the YouTube channel at the AP and New Principals Academy and binge watch the 172 that you missed. Then hit the subscribe button, because as I said, I was going to let you all know now, for those of you that don't know, beginning October 7th, we ain't on Facebook no more. That's over. We're not on Twitter no more. That's over. We're not on LinkedIn no more. That's over. Beginning October 7th, we strictly YouTube. I need everybody in the same place, right? So instead of waiting for October 7th, please do it now. Just go to AP and New Principals Academy, hit the red subscribe button, you in. Then when I post the link every Wednesday, it says notify me. Just click that link so you get the alert, and then you good, right? So again, we Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn until October 7th. October 7th, no more. We just YouTube, right? So start it now, y'all. Start it now. Let's get it over with. Right. So let's see. Am I finished? The new joint, real quick, the assistant principal identity. If you don't have it, come on, y'all. What you waiting for? And then get the companion, the assistant principal 50. Just go to Amazon. And now, since we're new principals as well, real quick, the principal 50, got to get your hands on that. The aspiring principal 50, you got to get your hands on that. And is my school a better school because I lead it? Not only get the book, but take that question and own it. Is my school a better school because I lead it? That's just the quintessential question that a leader could ask of oneself. Is my school a better school because I lead it? Let's see. I think I'm done, y'all. So yeah, I'm done with these announcements. So here's the thing. Well, I see one more. The AP and New Principals Academy Facebook page. That's not going anywhere. I'm just not going to be live streaming on there, but I'm going to use that for my Sunday morning commentary. So make sure that you like that page, that you follow that page, because that's where the commentary is going to be. Yeah, I know, Jasmine, I see it, but I can't spend all my time showing y'all all these books, man. Y'all, I wrote 14 books, 13 of them published. I got a manuscript sitting on the computer that I don't know when I'm going to release it yet. All right, here we go. I got a guest today, man. I got a guru on. I got an expert on. Her name, Dr. Marcy Roan, is in the building. But before I bring her up, let me say this to you. My topic, her topic, she wrote this book here, Learning Rounds with Teachers. You can go to Amazon right now and get it and follow along because I'm going to be using it somewhat with this session. But Learning Rounds with Teachers, and then subtitle, Building Reflective Practitioners. So we're talking instruction, and I don't think that we could ever exhaust the topic of instruction as it relates to leadership ever. It's just such an important topic. So let me say this to you before I bring her up. This is my monologue. Hey, new principal out there. Hey, assistant principal out there. Hey, veteran principal out there. At the end of the proverbial day, it's instruction where the rubber meets the road. Everything else, I mean, you bring in that great robotics program, great. I ain't mad at you. You bring in that great engineering program, I ain't mad at you. That technology program, all those other extracurricular activities, and you have students engaged in just so many different things. I'm not mad at you. That's a great thing. But at the end of the day, when the youngsters are in that classroom with their teacher, the question still remains, are youngsters being engaged effectively and learning at a high level in the process? Because at the end of the day, that is why they're there. Those other programs, yes, we're looking at the whole child. So we want to enhance and develop the whole child. But at the core of why they walked through the doors was not your extracurricular activity. At the core, relative to why they walk through the doors, is what happens in that little bitty space called a classroom, which I used to call the learning lab. That was what we every room in the building, I had a sign on it that said learning lab, right? So at the core of why they're there, the core of their existence in the building, what's happening in that classroom? What's happening between that teacher and that student? And is learning happening equitably at a high level? Is instruction phenomenal? Is instruction extraordinary? Is instruction amazing for each? Not all, because all students get lost in that. They become obscure. But each of the learners in the classroom, is instruction amazing for each of them? But here's the question then. What does the coaching look like between that teacher and that leader, or that instructional coach, or that mentor? What does that look like? What does that dynamic look like? It's football season now, and the regular season is getting ready to begin soon, September. And the coach is in the ear of the athletes, of the players throughout the season, throughout the week, throughout the day of practice, throughout the day of the game. It's coaching, 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 coaching. You see the players walk off the field. You watch the quarterback, because that's usually where the camera is, on the quarterback. And it's as he's walking to the sidelines, there's a coach that gets in his face. I don't care if your name is Tom Brady with 7 Super Bowls. When he walks to the sideline, he's not walking there alone. There's some coach with an iPad approaching him to give him further coaching in the middle of the game. The great Tom Brady. Some of y'all, I know y'all, everybody ain't gonna say great on that, but he got the 7 rings. It's undisputable, right? So I'm saying, so if someone of that caliber of a quarterback is being coached, if someone like a Aaron Rodgers, if someone like a Patrick Mahomes is being coached within the game, what does your coaching look like with your teachers? That's the question I'm getting to. What does your coaching look like with your teachers? How frequently does that occur? That you are coaching and you're coaching and you're coaching, but you can't coach if you ain't at the game. Y'all don't hear me. See, I slid my commentary down here, y'all. I ain't want it up top because I want these numbers to be a little bigger. What does the coaching look like during the game? See, in other words, school day is game day. That's what it is. It's game day. So it's 180 game days. So now the classroom is the game environment. That's the field. So I'm asking you, how often are you in the environment of the game? See, if you if you're in your office, or if you're in your hallway, or if you're in your cafeteria, right? Well, here's the thing. That's equivalent to the coach being in his office during the game, or her office during the game in other sports, right? See, on game day, you got to be on the same field with the athletes. Well, in the school on game day, you got to be in the same classroom with the students. How you going to be? It's game day and you at a meeting somewhere. You in your office somewhere. You on the phone somewhere, right? It's game day. You got to be at the game. And the game is taking place not in the hallway, not in your office, not outside on the playground. The game is taking place in the classroom. That's the football field. That's the basketball court. That's the ice at the hockey game. That's the diamond at the baseball game. That's the tennis court. That's the golf course. And I could go on and on. That's the game, baby. That's what I'm saying to you. But if you somewhere else, you ain't even on the sidelines. You out of the arena. You are out of the stadium. You ain't even walked in the stadium, somebody. You outside in the parking lot, man. How you gonna know what's happening in the game if you in the parking lot? Someone might say, someone who's thinking deep, well, I could get my cell phone and watch the game. All right, you could watch the game, but you can't engage in the game. So don't come at me with that little smart stuff, right? So you got to make sure that you are in the game environment, because that is where the action is taking place. Man, I need to take this commentary and put on one of them YouTube shorts, man, because somebody need to hear that one, right? So with that said, y'all, I ain't the guest today. I'm just the host. I got the guest is going to take what I just said to another level. Right. So let me bring my guest on up here, man, because we got some stuff to talk about. I got the Dr. Marcy Roan, the leadership, the learning rounds expert in the building. Dr. Rhone, good morning to you, and how are you?
Oh my gosh, I am behind the scenes saying amen to just about everything you just said. I mean, you couldn't have put up a better introduction, because that is the name of the game. If you're going to change instruction, you got to be in the game.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
If you're going to change instruction, you got to be in the game. Hey, y'all, hit that share button. Hit that. I'm glad when I don't have to say that no more. But for now, hit that share button. Hit that retweet button. Let them know we are here. I want y'all to know who our guest is. Our topic is developing a transformative learning rounds process. But first, I want you to know who's in the building. So Dr. Marcy Roan is a distinguished educator with a 24-year career encompassing various roles such as classroom teacher, district coach, school administrator, and leadership coach, and chief academic officer. Under her leadership, schools experienced substantial growth gains and witnessed a commendable reduction in disproportionate discipline measures. I want to read that part again. And witnessed a commendable reduction in disproportionate discipline measures. With a span of less than 3 years, let me say that again, within a span of less than 3 years, she successfully elevated her school's performance through a focus on instructional excellence and reflective practice. Now, I know I'm just reading the bio, but there's some teaching in this bio, so I'm gonna read that whole sentence again. Within a span of less than 3 years, she successfully elevated her school's performance through a focus on instructional excellence and reflective practice. Let that resonate. If not, writing it down. That's because, and we're gonna go all into that too, y'all. As a principal leadership coach, Dr. Rhone's expertise has extended to guiding elementary, middle, and high school leaders in enhancing instructional leadership and fostering sustainable student achievement. Y'all got to forgive me, man. It's so much in this bio that I just got to repeat things because we're using the bio to be instructive. As a principal leadership coach, Dr. Rhone's expertise has extended to guiding elementary, middle, and high school leaders in enhancing instructional leadership and fostering sustainable student achievement. That's what we all want at the end of the day. Coaching leaders using high leverage strategies led to significant progress, achieving or exceeding growth standards in the last 2 years. Recognized for innovation in education, Dr. Rhone's team was honored with the prestigious Guilford Education Spark Award. Their pioneering efforts in developing the district's first elementary school-wide coding initiative exemplified the commitment to advancing problem-based learning opportunities for all students. She is the author of Learning Rounds, Building Reflective Practitioners, which I showed you right here. A quick read outlining core structures for creating meaningful on-the-job professional development and learning-focused reflective practices for school improvement. It's a lot there, y'all. Hit that share button, man. Let them know we here. I'm finished with all my announcements. Let them know we're here. Tag somebody. Somebody might be out cutting the grass. They need to cut that later and come on inside and get some of this knowledge, or at least put the Bluetooth on and listen while they cut. Hey, Dr. Rhone, let's jump into it. As I ask every guest I bring on this platform, as an educator, who is Dr. Marcy Roan?
I think in a word, I am at my core and at my heart a coach. I have spent most of my years as an educator working as a coach and working side by side with teachers, with people who coach teachers, with principals, and I think that word in and of itself just encompasses who I am and what I focus on. I really want to help those who work with students be the best they can be. And that's what any coach wants.
I love it. And before I go any further, let me say to the audience, hey folks, to the family, I should say, to a fam out there. I spoke with Dr. Rhone off camera, and I told her, I asked her, I said, you got some time? Because we're going to be on here for a minute, y'all. So just stay with us, right? It's the start of a school year. We're almost there with some others. We're already there. I want you to get this, man. I want you to get this, because already I'm getting ready to go off script. That's why I interjected right now. Hey, Dr. Rhone, that word coach, as I was saying in my own monologue, it's such an important word. And I don't know that matter of fact, I do know that this word coach was not always a part of our lexicon in education. It took on some new strength at some point 20 years ago, maybe, but it wasn't always there. But you said in a word, coach. And I want you to go deeper for the benefit of our audience. What is this thing called coach or coaching? What does that look like?
Well, I think that, I think it became part of our lexicon because we were in that as school leaders, we were in that monitoring or compliance or, supervisory type lens. And we started to recognize that wasn't really forcing people to change, particularly adults, isn't sustainable, because then I'm only going to do something when you're watching. Whereas if you're a coach and you are side by side with someone and you are being a thought partner and really helping them think about the choices and the decisions they're making in the classroom, if it's the case of coaching a teacher, or in terms of a school leader, in terms of the decisions they're making around how they run their building and the choices they make for their daily activities, then you're starting to change habits. You're starting to change the supports, and it's really helping people be aware of the decisions that they make. I'm reading a book right now, and I know you typically ask about this later on in the podcast, but it's called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. And she talks about the concept of resulting. And resulting is the tendency to equate the quality of a decision with the quality of its outcome. And they're not the same thing. So we want to try to really help work with the quality of the decision and try to influence that outcome and not think about one tied with the other. You can make a quality decision and not have a quality outcome. So I think, being that coach is helping people to understand and be able to recognize the impacts of their decisions.
I love it. And, listening to you, here was my takeaway. I took everything you said and I encapsulated it into, you can't supervise greatness out of a teacher, but you can sure coach greatness into a teacher. That was my takeaway from what you said.
Oh, I wish I could have said that. You said that so much better. That was awesome.
Yeah, I can't supervise greatness out of you, but I can sure coach the greatness out of you.
Mm-hmm.
I can coach greatness into you. See, so that's and that was, I love it. So you were once a teacher, you were assistant principal, but somewhere along the way you made a decision that I want to lead. I want to be that number one person. I want to be that head person, that lead person. I want to be a principal. So my question to you then, what was your motivation to lead a school?
Well, I think first and foremost, I want to acknowledge the great coaches that I had. I couldn't have become a great coach without having people who believed in me, because that's part of coaching too, is making sure that people understand that they might not have the skills yet, but that's why you're working together. So I had great coaches as an assistant principal in my school principals. And that was key, first of all, was helping me to recognize that I could do it and that I was capable of doing it, and that I had the skill set, first of all, but also the mindset, because you've got to have the right mindset to be in some of today's schools. You say it every time at the introduction of all of your podcasts, is that you've got to come in with the fire, and you've got to bring it, and you've got to want it. And I got to the point where I think I can do this, and I want to do this. I want to make these changes, not just to be at the level where I can make all the decisions, right? I want to be at a level where I can start to impact on a greater scale. And to me, that next logical step was the school leadership role.
So consistent with that, and this is probably one of them loaded questions, and you handle it however best you see fit. Did your assistant principalship adequately prepare you for instructional leadership?
Yes and no. One, I think that a lot of assistant principal roles help you become really good at being an assistant principal. And that's where the good coach comes in as a principal. I had a principal who charged me, first of all, with instructional leadership, gave me areas of instruction to supervise with the expectation that I would then make a difference. So I think it was, again, that having that school leader who acknowledged in me what I could bring to the table and gave me the forum to be able to build my instructional leadership skills and to kind of strengthen my iron around instruction in a building and being able to lead adults with instruction.
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on the school principal that you have.
Yeah. And that's been a recurring theme on this platform. It boils down to who that principal is. If that AP is going to get the exposure to all the facets of leadership, which is inclusive of instructional leadership, learning rounds, etc. It boils down to who that leader is and what kind of exposure that leader had and what kind of comfortability that leader has in ensuring that AP is well prepared to one day assume that position. So the bottom line, as I tell my fam on the platform all the time, if you're not getting it to school, you better seek it out another way. But you got to get it. So let me quote your bio. Your bio states, within a span of less than, as I read before, within a span of less than 3 years, she successfully elevated her school's performance through a focus on instructional excellence and reflective practice. So I want to zero in on those two: instructional excellence, reflective practice. I want you to elaborate on what that may look like and how it could benefit our leaders who are watching right now.
Okay. So first, instructional excellence is around making sure that the instruction that's happening in our buildings is at the highest level possible. So the way in which you do that is, first and foremost, making sure you can define what instructional excellence looks like in your building. And it is having conversations with your teams and with your teachers and with your support staff around what is your vision for instructional excellence? What does that look like? And to speak to that, you've got to be the coach in the game. I spent a lot of time, my first year as a principal, I spent a lot of time going into classrooms and watching and listening and learning and taking notes around what I was seeing and having conversations with teachers about what they felt was working in their classrooms in terms of the impact they were having with students and what they felt was challenging for them. Looking at their growth data and saying, okay, well, it seems like for this particular population, you do a really good job with maybe differentiating instruction, but with this particular population, they seem to not be doing as well. So why do you think that might be? What do you think the impediments are for that? So really, really understanding what instructional excellence looks like in your building and starting to establish that language around instructional excellence, because you're going to come back later when you start looking in classrooms and saying, okay, these are the elements that we say are instructional excellent. You may have to have some hard conversations around it. So you have to be really clear about what instructional excellence looks like.
Y'all hear that? You got to be clear. You've got to be able to define that, because you think about it, that word excellent or excellence is such an abstract word.
Mm-hmm.
It all boils down to one's standards, right? If your standards are low, then excellence may not look the way it looks to someone that has a higher level of standard, right? So as a school, we got to be on the same page, right? In terms of what is this thing, this abstraction called excellence? What does it really look like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What emotion does it evoke, etc.? What is excellence? Right. And then we move accordingly. Man, I love it. I love it. I love it. We're going to get to the learning rounds, but I got 3 more I want to throw at you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to go hard on these learning rounds. Have you ever given any thought to the quantity of time that a leader should spend in the area of instructional leadership / coaching, and particularly as it relates to a low performing school? Have you ever given any thought to that? So what are your thoughts?
Are we looking for a magic number?
Not necessarily. No, I'm not. I think I'm looking more so for an idea of a percentage of what portion of my day should be spent in instruction, since as a leader, and particularly as a new principal, but just as a leader generically, I'm gonna go to the new principal in a little while, of how do I balance everything but still be that person where, as was said earlier, where the rubber meets the road, that I'm playing my part within that.
Yep. Two things that I want to share. One, and neither one of them do I own, but I have adopted them as my own personal mantras. One, we know that exceptional leaders succeed because of how they use their time. We know that is what makes effective leadership. So when we think about the use of time, we've got to be really strategic about how we utilize that time. And I always kind of used the gauge of, if I'm spending more than 20% of my time on anything, then it better be a goal for me. Like, for example, if I'm spending 20% of my time dealing with supervision, that tells me that there's a structure that's missing somewhere. There's something missing somewhere, because if it's more than 20%, then it's a good portion of my time. And for me, if I'm going to spend a good portion of my time on anything, then it's got to be important. It's got to be a goal. James Clear in Atomic Habits says it perfectly when he says that you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So if you are spending the time
give us that again.
Yeah, James Clear, and it's in his book Atomic Habits, and he says you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
That's heavy.
So what that means is, if I'm spending my time in the building chasing kids and putting out fires, then there are not systems in place that will help me focus on instruction. There are systems missing. So, that's one of the reasons why I formatted the book in the way that I did, the learning rounds with teachers, and why I talk about it in that sense, is because it is all about systems. Because if I don't have those systems in place, then I will be reactively leading. I will not be proactively leading.
Wow. Wow. So, and I see that there are others who know that quote as well, which is good. And Troy Javan, he's asking for that quote one more time.
One more time. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
If you missed that, Troy, or anybody else out there, just rewind
Yeah.
it later at whatever point we are, because I
Yeah.
can't see the time on here, but whatever point we are, rewind it back. Dr. Rhone, I want you to speak to that assistant principal out there, who's in a school where this person spends an inordinate amount of time disciplining young people. Achievement is low. He's spending a lot of time disciplining young people and not being able to be that instructional leader. This person could be on the call right now and is fired up by just the few minutes that we've been on. Speak to that person about how I can make instructional leader in a significant component of my practice, as opposed to it taking a back seat to all the work I do as a disciplinarian.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I hear that one from assistant principals all the time. So when I start hearing those kinds of things, I'm spending an inordinate amount of time disciplining kids. I mean, it may take me 20 or 30 minutes to process a discipline situation in the building. And when you compound that by, the number of teachers in your building, it can suck up your entire day. Look at your process for how you discipline students. First of all, are we just going and taking kids out of classrooms when teachers have had enough? Do we have a system in place that defines classroom managed behaviors and administrative managed behaviors? And are we holding teachers accountable for that? When we pull students and work on discipline issues, what is our process for that? Do we have a conversation? Are we doing some restorative practices? And if so, are we the right person? Are we the best person to be doing that? Because there may be somebody else in the building, a connection that the student has with another adult in the building, a counselor, a social worker, someone who can support those efforts if a system were in place to be able to have that conversation. You don't always have to be the one that does everything in the discipline referral process. The call to parents, is it one that needs to be had immediately, or is it one that can wait until after the school bell rings? So looking at your process for how you're working with kids that are having behavioral issues, and if there are other supports in the building, and other ways that you can arrange that process to save you time. And to give that time back to you when you can't be in classrooms after school, but I can make phone calls and do certain aspects of that behavior after the kids leave.
Yeah. Let's look at a comparable question with the new principal, and then we'll jump into learning rounds after this question. So there's a new principal on the call right now, I have to believe. And this person, as an AP, I was AP, I had a principal, so I wasn't that number one person in the building. The buck did not stop with me. But now all of a sudden, I'm number one. The buck stops with me. The reality is set in. I am the principal of the building. And I feel that I need to learn everything about this building. I need to learn all facets, all aspects of school leadership. But I also know that the rubber meets the road in the classroom instructionally. And I want to be that person as well. So with that said, speak to that person that's on that I just feel is on this call right now. How do I manage being an instructional leader, but all the other responsibilities that come with being a brand new principal? How do I balance all of that out?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And when I sit down with new principals and we look at that, we look at calendar, because that's That's a management of time, right? And the number of hours that we have in the day. And then we look at those things that we are working with in the building that don't have to do with instruction. Like, for example, I can't go visit. I can't put on my schedule that I'm going to go visit classrooms first thing in the morning because we're dealing with arrival and I've got kids coming all over the building, and I need to take that time, use that time to create relationships with students. So I need to be in the front welcoming students as they come into the building. You know, going back to James Clear and Atomic Habits and the idea of systems, making sure that I can put systems in place for just about everything. I had a system in place for how my front office staff dealt with people coming into the building and wanting impromptu meetings, and making sure that my parents knew. I communicated with them in several different formats, making sure they knew that my priority was educating their child. And so there were certain times when I was not available to meet with them. You know, it doesn't cure all, it doesn't solve all problems, and it doesn't mean that you won't ever have to be pulled from a classroom. But making sure that those things that can be put into a system and managed by your schedule have a place in your schedule. Because I want to save those times, like when everybody was at lunch. If I'm in the cafeteria doing lunch duty, then I'm responding to emails, I'm making phone calls, I'm having conversations with kids, because I can't be in classrooms, but I can do some other things during that time. And just making sure, first and foremost, that my schedule reflects my priorities. And if it's only 10 minutes a day that I'm getting into classrooms, how long will it take me to get into the classrooms in my building, and what does that look like?
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's go to let's talk about learning rounds. Let's
Sure.
talk. Yeah. So I want to go to your book. Because in your book, let me go to that page here. In your book, and let me put the book on the screen. Learning rounds with teachers, building reflective practitioners. You talk about you likened instructional rounds to a lot of what happens in the medical field, and I want to read that. I'm going to go verbatim in the book. And this was a scenario that you gave us. You said the hospital staff quickly instituted a process of rounds where one representative from each area of specialization, neurology, infectious disease, cardiology, and every other department charged with her care, such as the nursing staff, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech, would all gather and discuss observations, medical interventions, and the impact of actions already taken. So here you looked at this medical team in terms of the roles and responsibilities of everybody that was there. And then you made this comparison, which I want to read. I want to read this comparison. You said, what if we used a similar approach using data, best practices, high leverage moves, multiple perspectives and observations when working towards the best outcome for students? This is where learning rounds come in, and what this resource is intended to promote. So you looked at this medical model, these teams, and you said, what if we approach this thing in a comparable fashion? So I got as I told you off mic, I got a 7-part question for you, right? And so let's just jump into it. Talk to us about this comparison and explain to us what learning rounds actually are. Because I think there's a misconception, and I'm gonna talk about this in the second part of this question, of learning rounds being synonymous with walkthroughs, right? So talk to us first about this comparison and explain to us, what is a learning round?
So I specifically chose the term learning round because there are some other names out there for similar types of work that is not what I'm talking about, like walkthroughs and instructional rounds. And I wanted to focus on the aspect of the medical round that was really the conversation. And the reason I framed the book the way I did around the medical field was through an experience I had with a family member who got ill, and watching this process in action with that family member. And what I found was really interesting, and the piece that I took away from it was when they did these, when the medical field conducted the rounds, they talked to each other about things that were happening with the care that was going on. So when I extrapolate that and look at it from the lens of a school principal, I wanted to be able to look at the teaching and learning, or the teaching that was happening in the classrooms with other people, and start thinking about it in terms of the impact. Because teaching doesn't necessarily always lead to learning, right? So I want to make sure that when we're in classrooms and we're looking at what's happening, the interaction between the adult and the student, that we're thinking about it in terms of impact. Because the question that the doctors always asked each other was, well, what was the result of that? What was the impact of that particular action or that particular intervention that was happening? So that's what I wanted to tie into was, what are we watching in classrooms? What instructional decisions are being made that are leading to the impact that we want to have with kids and that we want to have with learning? Because if we're not having any impact, then what's happening in classrooms is irrelevant. So that's kind of how I framed learning rounds. It is really talking about, what do you see happening between adult action and student impact, and where does that live in terms of, is it something we need to continue doing? Is it something we need to stop doing? Is it working for all kids, or is it just working for some of the students? Is it working for each and every student in that classroom, or is it only something that's having an impact on a few?
And that leads me to the second part. So therefore, what is the difference then between a learning round and walkthroughs? And we could even talk about instructional rounds as well. You could throw that in.
Yeah, it's probably not a huge difference or distinction. I think in my mind, it's really in terms of the intention. When I go through and I'm doing a walkthrough, I have a specific set of criteria. I'm looking to see if students are engaged, if there's a standard on the board, if there's, if the teacher shows evidence of having positive relationships with students, if you've got to focus on relationships in the classroom. So the walkthrough document, it's a document that's designed to identify what the school may be working on, or what the district identifies that you need to work on. And it's kind of, it's synonymous with sometimes a checklist, and saying, okay, well, they've got this, they've got this, they've got this. That's not really the intention that I had around learning rounds. The learning rounds is really looking at what is present, and is what's present leading to an impact in how students are responding to it. Because we have, as teachers in the classroom, there is no shortage of strategy that we can use for anything that we're doing. I mean, there's a plethora of student activities and ways that we can engage students in the classroom. So teachers have a multitude of decisions that they can make for any given instructional decision that they make in the classroom. So it's not really about, did I make the right decision as to what activity I chose? It is, what made the activity you chose the right activity for those kids at that time with these learning needs, and what was the resulting impact? Tell me,
who are the folks on the team? That team is comprised of who?
So I started with my administrative team, so my APs. I started with my coaches in the building, those people that were directly responsible for supporting instruction in the school. So I started with that team, and then I moved to teachers. And the way I had teachers involved in that process was I incorporated it as part of a professional learning communities. And so and I had a set of professional learning community focus. that I went through. So usually once every probably 4 weeks, depending on where we were in that professional learning cycle, all teachers during their professional learning communities would go on learning rounds with the administration, with support staff, and that kind of thing. So, sometimes we were able to add our special needs teachers and exceptional children's teachers and those kinds of support staff as well. But it wasn't necessarily all the time.
So how does one receive feedback?
So in the book and when I first started the learning rounds process, it wasn't about feedback for the individual teacher. And I noticed that Melissa's comment around taking the vulnerability of teachers, she's exactly right. It does take a great deal of vulnerability on the teacher's part to engage in this kind of work, because you're opening yourself up. You're opening your classroom, you're opening your practice, you're opening your decision-making up for others to say, hey, have you thought about? So that's why I start slow. The first couple of times I do learning rounds, I don't even take anything to write with. I don't take anything to write with and nothing to write on. And I just watch and listen. And I'm listening for connections between what the teacher's doing and how the students are responding. And then I start adding other folks, because by the time you get to teachers, it's not uncommon to walk into a classroom 5 people deep, and be watching what's happening in that classroom. But I also want to make sure that my teachers understand that this is not about we all came in and this is what we saw you doing. It is we all came in and we noticed that students you made this particular decision, whether it's the activity you had students doing or whether it's the resource you gave them, and here's how students responded to that. Here's what we noticed. Sometimes I'll take pictures of the student work, or take notes on what students say, or take a short little video clip. But it's really about, here's how the students responded. Did you notice? Were you aware that this is what was happening? And there's a huge amount of trust that's involved with that, which is why the very first letter of the acronym that I provide in the book to help frame this process is growing the culture. I started with my leadership team and just providing evidence, resources and articles and things like that around what are learning rounds and what are instructional rounds, what are walkthroughs, so we can start having those conversations.
What are your thoughts about, there's one thing we talk about school level staff as a part of that team, but then there are other places where there's district staff members. I remember there's a district here, I won't name the district, but one of the local districts here in Jersey, the teachers nickname these teams as the SWAT team. So the SWAT team is coming into our classrooms and the language was to observe us teaching, right? So they didn't see this as anything productive. They saw this as something very much counterproductive and gotcha, right? The SWAT team. What are your thoughts about learning rounds being conducted by folks who are not necessarily associated with the building, with the school, versus folks who are part of the school staff?
I think it goes back to how you build the trust and the culture of that occurs. I mean, if you're getting named the SWAT team and you're coming in and looking for particular aspects of teaching and learning, then that's a walkthrough to me. That's something other than what I talk about as far as learning rounds.
An impact.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's keep moving. So what are some of the challenges then? And as I tell all my guests, I'm always thinking about the fam that's watching, because I know we just got different experiential backgrounds, different environments that we're working in, different leaders we're working with and for, that type of thing. So when you talk about the rollout of learning rounds, like, it's not, I'm in a school and that's not part of what we do. I'm being introduced to this today on August 19 on the AP and New Principals Academy with Dr. Marcy Roan. What are the challenges of rolling out learning rounds from, and I want to start it from the principal's vantage point.
Well, it can be as straightforward as scheduling. When is this going to happen? What does that look like? And that's why I said the way that I started with it was working through my professional learning communities. It was part of those teacher meeting times that were set aside for talking about teaching and planning communities around that. So I started there. But I can also see where just having the practice of walking around and being seen in the building, like you had mentioned earlier in the podcast, if you're not in the game,
Yeah.
if you're in your office. So if you are able to recognize that, I think my teachers would be freaked out if they saw me in the hallway, because I haven't spent a whole lot of time there, or I'm new to my building, so my teachers don't know me. I would make it a habit of being seen in classrooms every day, even if it's just, I'm going to interject here and kind of back up my thinking. I was once a teacher in a school where the principal had pulled teachers together from around the district and from the schools in which she was already a leader to open up a new building in a different part of the district. And so we were all kind of new to her as a leader, to the building. And what she did, and I didn't think about it at the time, but I reflected on it once I became a principal myself. The first several months of school, she and the assistant principal would just kind of like go in. We had offices that would connect our classrooms, and she would go in one door and she would just walk through and she'd be like, "Hey, I'm just saying hi today." And she would go through the other classroom and she would say hello and how's everybody today? Great to see you. And then she would just continue. We knew that was going to happen the first 10 minutes of class, that she was going to be in our classrooms. So I think that, depending on your starting point may depend on what you choose to start doing to build that culture. If you're already in a building where your teachers are comfortable, they know people are coming into their classrooms, you may be able to just start going in and staying a few minutes. But it really depends on where you are right now.
And so let's take that same question
Mm-hmm.
and let's shift it to that brand new 2023-24 school year, first year principal. And the question is, Dr. Rhone, where do I start?
Where do you start? I think you start by having conversations with your staff about what instructional excellence looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, what are the instructional goals for the building. Start having those conversations, because the learning rounds isn't going to replace your instructional goals. It's going to enhance them. It's there to help make sure that those instructional goals are being realized. So that's going to be the vehicle that's going to make all of those other things come to fruition. So we need to start with that clarity of instructional vision and making sure that everybody understands that, we're going to make some gains this year, and we're going to do it, based on our data from last year. We're going to start with our seventh grade math. I think one thing I tend to notice in coaching principals a lot is that they tend to bite off more than they can chew initially, and say, okay, well, we're gonna grow our reading and math scores by 10% this year. Wow, that's a lot, and I think learning how to go slow so that you can go fast, and learning how to take small but intentional action and focusing on that, it can be easier to manage from a leadership standpoint, but then it can also be easier for teachers to swallow, because they're not coming in I'm not coming into every single subject and coming in all day. It is we're going to really focus on our math goals this year and what we're going to do for students this year in our math. And so to that end, you're going to see us coming quite frequently into your classrooms, into your math classrooms, and starting small so it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, starting small. So it's not overwhelming. Not I'm that new principal and bam, we're going to disrupt everything that's been done here in the past. And because first, we talk about that trust, and I see that word coming up a lot in the comments. I got to establish some level of trust. And one of those aspects of trust is just how long are you going to be here? Right? Are you going to be, do you plan to be here long on the one hand, and will you survive this place on the other hand? Right? So will you be here? I need to trust that you're going to be here with us, that these ideas are not just temporary and then you're off somewhere else. And now we got some new leader coming in with some altogether different way of leading and looking at the way leadership rolls out in the school. Who's going to be here? So that trust, man, it really, really matters. Right?
Absolutely.
It really, really matters. A new principal out there, hear me. Start small. Right? As Dr. Rhone just said, with this and everything else. You don't have to come at your staff like this on the first day of school. Right? Learn that building. Learn those individuals. Learn your students. Learn the landscape of your building, and you'll know how to proceed. It is key. It is key. Yeah. Dr. Rhone, there's an AP out here watching right now, and they've been on since 10:55, and they're fired up. You have fired them up. I feel it. I feel the energy coming through the computer. But they're an assistant principal. They're not a principal. But they see clearly that there needs to be a change in terms of how they approach instruction in the classroom. So they're ready. Here's the problem, and here's the challenge. The principal is the impediment. The principal is the roadblock. This is not the assistant principal school. The assistant principal is there to assist the principal. So my question to you is, what advice do you have for that AP that is so fired up, ready to go, ready to read your book, take everything in that book, ready to take everything you said today thus far, bring it to the school, and there's a roadblock called principal?
I would hope that as an assistant principal, there is at least one area for which they have monitoring or supervision under their wheelhouse, whether that is a particular content area. I'm an assistant principal in a middle school, and I'm in charge of my seventh grade ELA, or 8th grade math, or whatever it is. Look for those areas in your responsibilities where you can start small with some instructional movement. And then I would just take that one. If it's a content area. If it's a group of teachers, a group of teachers, and just start with creating that instructional vision. And, obviously you don't want to go outside of your principal's vision, but just say, you can reiterate and say, okay, well, we know one of our goals this year is to improve student engagement. So when I come around looking for student engagement, what are some of the things you think identify students that are engaged? What does that look like to you? Again, going back to that original conversation about making sure that we understand what instructional excellence looks like and sounds like. So I would tell them to look for an area that they are already responsible for in terms of instruction. Now, do we have APs out there? Is it possible we've got APs out there where I don't deal with any instruction? I just deal with buses, and I deal with books. To them, I would suggest that they be regular attendees in their school improvement meetings, those types of meetings where instruction occurs, and start being seen as someone where you can come to for instructional support. Even when you're dealing with, if all I deal with is behavior, well, there are some academic instructional implications to all the behavior you deal with.
That's right.
So what is the impact to instruction? Maybe that's the in that you have is, I'm working with behavior, and I'm noticing that this particular grade level or these particular teachers are really struggling with behavior. Maybe we come in and start looking at how kids are engaged, and maybe that's what's causing some of the behavior concerns. So I think you can find ways to make instruction part of what you talk about and what you do as an AP, it just might take a little longer. Like you wouldn't be able to maybe go in and structure an entire school-wide system of learning rounds, but you can do it in your area. You can do it in your content, or you might have to back up even further, like I said, and go through an avenue like behavior, because instruction, academics, and behavior are linked.
There's two words, in terms of, like I did before, kind of some sort of encapsulated what you said. And there are two words that I heard in what you were saying: visibility and voice. Right? Did I make myself visible in various different spaces where my voice can be heard about some of the things that I may see that are lacking, that need to take place within my building, that are going to benefit young people. But if I'm not in those spaces, if I'm not in those rooms, if I'm not at those tables, then I have no visibility and thereby no voice to express about some of the concerns that I may have, or even issues. And as an AP, my voice should be acknowledged. It should be appreciated and respected in those areas. I'm not hired as an AP to be silent. I'm one of the key people as far as the leadership in the building, right? So think about that. But also, as I say on this platform all the time, folks, think about your people skills and how you engage people, particularly how you engage people who have authority over you in terms of position and rank, right? Know how to talk to people. In the book, I always recommend, if I can put my hands on it, here it is: How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, written in 1936. For those of us who may need to sharpen our people skills and influencing people to come around to our way of thinking. Good stuff. We still here, folks. But we doing good on time. Hit that share, hit that retweet. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna do that on YouTube. I can't say hit that share, man. I just gotta assume that everybody's gonna be there somehow. So but we gonna figure it out. I ain't worried about it. But Dr. Rhone, we talked briefly about time, and I want to go back to this word time and talk to us about, how do we make time an asset as it relates to learning rounds and instructional leadership? How do we make time an asset as opposed to time being a challenge, an obstacle, or a liability?
Well, I know a lot of leaders may think about this a minute as I say this, but time is really the only thing we have control over. And I hear a lot of leaders say, I don't have time. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. But time is the only thing you can control in your building. So I'm gonna connect time to systems, because we've got to be able to create the systems that are going to give us the time that we need to focus on what we need to focus on. Now, does that mean you're always going to have 30 minutes to walk through classrooms? No, but if I've got 10 minutes, I can walk through 3. And then tomorrow, maybe I'll have another 10 minutes where I can walk through another 3 classrooms. So it's really about making sure that your calendar aligns with your priorities. I mean, principals know that when they design a master schedule, I always tell my principals that the master schedule is a visual representation of your priorities. And your calendar is the same way. So we need to make sure that we're setting aside the time. And if that means I need to have a system in place for my front office staff, that if somebody comes in the building, or if there is a phone call, that mine had a script that they said, Dr. Rhone is in classrooms. She's focused on making sure your child is getting the best education possible. Is there a time or or a day that if you need to meet in person, or a time where she can call you back. So making sure that we prioritize it on our schedules.
I love it. And I got one more with this 7-part question that I've been asking you. Talk to us about the correlation between school culture and learning rounds that benefit entire school communities. And in other words, and just in case the question is not clear, can learning rounds be effective in a school culture that are not conducive to them being effective? And I guess I answered my own question in the question, but talk to us about that correlation.
Yeah, I mean, they're tightly intertwined, right? I mean, you're trying to create a system where you're going into someone else's space, and you are trying to determine, as an outsider, you're trying to just determine the effectiveness or the impact between the decisions that are made by the adult and the impact to the student. You can't do that without trust. You can't do that with making sure that everybody's clear on what the intentions of these are, because otherwise, as the teacher, I'm always going to be standing there looking side-eyed, trying to figure out what you're doing, where you're going, what you're saying to my kids as I'm trying to teach. So I've got to make sure that that the culture aligns to this work. And if you've got to spend the first semester as an AP or as a beginning principal building a culture of trust, visibility, and awareness around how to make change happen instructionally, then do that. You want to start slow to go fast. If I don't have that core piece down, then whatever I do in the classroom is just, it's going to be a gotcha, when it should be I've got you. I'm a coach. I've got you.
Yeah.
Not a gotcha as in this is punitive.
Yeah. So let me just holler at the audience real quick, at the family. The culture of your building. It's my strong contention, and I'm not the learning rounds expert, right? But it's my strong contention, if you don't have a school culture that's compatible with the objectives of learning rounds, then it's probably not going to happen optimally for you, right? If it's not compatible, if it's not conducive, right? That the culture of that building, where there's not a teacher in that building that doesn't embrace what it is that we're doing, right? It's got to be, if this is gotcha, if this is, oh my God, right? Oh God, here they come. If it's that type of vibe, then it's not going to be helpful. But when you've got staff who want to learn, and they see you as folks who are going to help them to learn and grow in their positions, man, now you're talking about a culture that's working for and toward the process, as opposed to a culture that is counterproductive. So they go, as you just said, they go hand in glove.
Yeah. And I think what you just hit on was teachers that are willing to learn. You may find, again, as a principal who's not directly in charge of creating the direction for learning rounds, perhaps, or as a brand new principal, you may have to start by just figuring out who are those early adopters that I have in my building that would be open to this kind of a process. And maybe I walk through everybody's classroom, but these particular teachers are the ones I'm going to start talking about impact with.
Yeah.
They're the ones I'm going to start having that conversation with.
And Carol Blanchard, I appreciate that comment. This is an epic back to school session, man. That's
awesome.
That's the quintessential compliment, right?
Yes. Thank you, Carol.
Yeah. Hey, hey, folks, listen. Hey, fam out there. I know what time it is. It's 12:19. I mean, we don't stop this early, but I want to forewarn you. These final questions, as I told Dr. Rhone beforehand, these are the ones we getting ready to get deeper, right? So if you've enjoyed what we've talked about thus far, we getting ready to go deeper with it now, right? So let me throw it at you, Doc. It's towards starting the process of learning rounds. The first step is, as you call it, building a reflective staff. All right, Let me say that again, building a reflective staff. So give us an understanding of what's entailed toward building a reflective staff, inclusive of, as you coined it, the growth acronym.
So people aren't all naturally reflective. Some people just do and react and do and react and do and react. So we've got to build that in our staff and in our buildings. And I started that process very much by the questions I ask. When I first started as a principal and as an AP, I had to supervise and provide evaluations for teachers. That was just part of what we do, right? So when I would do those summary conversations, and my teachers very quickly caught on to it, and they would run back to the other teachers and they'd be like, she's going to ask you a whole bunch of questions and they're really hard. And when I got wind of that, it made me chuckle, because the questions, I didn't think the questions were really hard. Like, for example, most people ask in a summary conversation, or after they've done an observation in a classroom, will ask, well, how do you think the lesson went? And I never started with that, because in my mind, that was always it really doesn't matter how you thought the lesson went. What really matters is, what did your kids get out of whatever it was that you did? So, I would start out by asking questions like, what was the most impactful thing that you did today in that lesson? Or why do you think that your kids responded the way they did with that particular lesson? If you had the opportunity to do that lesson again, how would you make it more effective? So those were the questions that some of my teachers thought were really hard. And that lets me know that they aren't yet familiar with how to be truly reflective. Because as a teacher, it's not just about finishing the lesson plan. It's about making sure that whatever is happening in the classroom is having a direct impact to the students in that room.
Yeah.
So I started with my own language and making sure that I was asking reflective questions. When I had teachers who would call for behavior support, and they would call and they would be like, well, this is what happened. And I would say, well, what's the impact of that? So it got to be where they would just start repeating my questions back to me. I know what you're going to ask me. I know you're going to ask me about the impact. I'm not ready to talk about that just yet. So, but they were prepared for it. And once they started showing me that they were prepared to have to answer that question, because they knew that was what I was going to ask, then I knew that we were on our way towards making reflective thinking just a part of the culture.
So what about that growth acronym? Could you just give us a summary?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So I wanted to provide the book is a really short read, and I intended it to be that way because I wanted it to be just kind of an overarching perspective of a process. So I use the growth acronym as a means to kind of frame the process. The G is for growing the culture, and that is the first one. And that's the one that you want to make sure that you've got down before you keep moving forward and just kind of barging into people's classrooms. You want to make sure you're also reflecting on data, because that's going to be your measure of impact. It's not the only measure, test scores, numerical data, but it is the outward and visible sign of the impact that you're having on kids. You want to make sure that you're observing students and tasks when you go into classrooms. I recall one of the first learning rounds I did, and I had a group of teachers, and they came out of the classroom, and one of the teachers was like, "Oh my God, did you see her bulletin board? It was fantastic. She's got it all set up." And I realized that she had totally missed the mark. And so I had to go back and really put in my process questions, guiding questions for teachers to look at and to think about as they were going into those learning rounds, because I want them observing students and I want them observing the task, because this wasn't about the teacher. The teacher's not going to get the feedback. We're going to talk about what is the impact of what's happening. And we want to watch for that evidence of impact, which is the W in the growth mindset. What is the evidence that you have of that impact? We say, when teachers come out of a learning round and they say, well, I noticed the kids were engaged. What's your evidence for that? What did you see? What did you hear that leads you to believe that students were engaged? You want to talk about the actions and the evidence in the classroom. So you want to make sure that you provide time after these learning rounds for the group to talk. one of the things I learned from the medical, watching the medical field do this process, is that there was always the opportunity, whether it was right after they came out of a patient's room or if it was after they visited a few rooms, there was always the opportunity where they talked about, okay, what did you see here? What was the impact of these decisions and what we saw happening in that room and how the patient was responding? So you want to make sure, a lot of times we'll do all these walkthroughs and then we don't have time to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, we'll just get up later and talk about it. But we can't leave that part out. That's how we're building that reflective muscle, is by having that conversation about talking about the actions that were in the classroom and the evidence that we have for those actions. And then making sure that we are highlighting high leverage actions. One of the final pieces that I put into learning rounds after we got really strong with reflecting on the data and observing the students in task and looking for that evidence of impact is looking for patterns. So we would bring back, when we started taking the notes on the in our learning rounds, we would be taking notes on the actions and the evidence in the classroom. And then when we came together and had that conversation, we would kind of lay them all out on the table and look at them and look for patterns that were happening in the classroom. And that became pieces that we could then take to our school improvement teams to say, this is what we saw happening in classrooms. So this is evidence that we're moving in the right direction. Or these are things we noticed that were happening in classrooms. I think we need to maybe shift how we're going, because that's not consistent with the direction we defined that we wanted to move in. So that's kind of how that growth acronym shows up in the process.
You know, before I move to the second phase, designing structures to support effective learning rounds. With the model you're talking about now, are teachers at all a part of the team, or is this strictly administration, instructional coaches, that type of thing?
I started out with my administration and instructional coaches. I think it depends on the building. If you've already been doing something like this, you could probably start pulling teachers into that process initially. But when I moved to my first principalship, I wasn't in a building where that was a standard process, and that wasn't happening regularly. So I started small with my administrative staff and with my coaching staff. And then as we're going to talk about in a minute with the structures, that's how we started pulling teachers in. Because I couldn't just go I had to be systematic about when I pulled teachers and who we went to visit and where all that happened. So it was part of a process.
And Principal Sherrod Laws is asking, teacher leaders, are they a part of that as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Anyone who's charged with supporting instruction, teaching and learning in your building. Mm-hmm.
And then Lois, where we at here? Lois Jeremy Green is asking about the T and the H.
The T and the H. The T was talking about actions and evidence. So that's making sure that you're having those follow-up conversations. And then the H is about highlighting high leverage actions. So that's where we would come back and say, okay, here's all our evidence that we collected in that classroom and we talked about. Are there any patterns that we're seeing across the observers and across the classrooms that we visited?
Appreciate it. So just because I know a lot of my audience, in terms of just, you get to know people,
Mm-hmm.
and they know it's an acronym. I know they're looking for the exact. So this is what I'm gonna do, Lois and everybody else. I'm gonna read these real quick. They're just subheadings, and then you rewind later and get them again, and then get your hands on the book, and then you'll have all the description. So that G, grow culture. R, reflect on available data. O, observe students and task first. W, watch for evidence of impact. T, talk about actions and evidence. And then H, highlight high leverage action, right? So you can rewind that to get it again at whatever point you are at, because I don't get to see the timer, but I think you all can see the timer. And oh no, yes I can. 1 hour 33 minutes and 58 seconds. I forgot that was up there. And so you can just go back there and you'll see it, and then get your hands on the book. Go to Amazon, get that book. All right, let's go. So designing structures to support effective learning rounds. Give us an understanding of what's entailed toward designing structures to support effective learning rounds?
Yeah. So that goes back to things like master scheduling and looking at your master schedule. And if you have, for example, if you have professional learning communities that are happening maybe 30 minutes once a week, that's not going to give you a whole lot of opportunity to have the kind of conversations that we're talking about here. So one of the first shifts I made in between my first year of being a principal and my second year was making sure that I had time allotted for in-depth professional learning communities, because I knew that that was the time period that my teachers were going to be available to be part of the process. So I made some shifts in master scheduling so that we could double up the time. And I ended up with 90 minutes of time at least once a month, once a week, for my teachers to be able to engage in this work. So it goes back to the priorities that are evidenced from things like your master schedule.
Love it. I'm looking at these comments.
Yeah.
Please post the title of the book. There we go. Learning Round.
There we go.
With Teachers, Building Reflective Practitioners. There's even smaller print here. A practical guide to assist schools in developing a transformative learning rounds process, which is how I came up with the title of this presentation. Get it right on Amazon. It's there. And then lastly, this last question is really what we've been talking about, but I'm gonna give it to you anyway because it's a subtitle. It's a chapter in the book. Describe effective learning walk. So describe for us what an effective learning walk in a nutshell. What does that look like?
Okay, first and foremost, it is not something that gets canceled. I mean, going back to our priorities, our professional learning communities happened every week. Unless there was something that was unavoidable. I know around if we're testing or if we're doing certain things, you'll hear folks say, "Well, we won't do a PLC this week. We're going to cancel them this week because teachers are really stressed," or whatever that happened. We didn't have that. First and foremost, it was, this is the time we're going to do this, and this happens regardless.
Yeah.
And even in this day and age where we have a lot of folks in our building who are not certified. We're dealing with a lot of either vacancies or people who are in our classrooms that are not certified. This is a fantastic process for them to be able to go to other classrooms and be part of these conversations. This is a way we can build capacity from within to be able to counteract some of the realities of what we're dealing with, which is a lot of non-certified people in our classrooms. So first and foremost, they were happening every week, regardless.
Love it. So again, as I'm giving you all this off camera conversation, folks. I was saying to Doc that there's no way in the world that you could give these entire chapters, because these last three questions were chapter titles, and there's no way that she could roll all that out in a short academy presentation. But you get the book, and you'll get all of that specificity in terms of what you would need to roll out these learning rounds in your school. So with that, I got one more question for you. Then we go to our rapid fire BAM questions. With everything you've described, Dr. Rhone, what is a realistic goal for learning walks, for when learning walks can be fully embedded in the culture of a school? And I know that's going to vary with the school, but just in a nutshell.
Yep. If you are a school that has not done anything with learning rounds and you are going to start with growing a culture, I would shoot for second semester. I really would, because it may take you that long to build the culture, build the trust, put the systems in place, and get things rolling in a way that's meaningful. Now, that doesn't mean you can't start with your AP and start with some of your instructional staff and help them kind of, here's what we're doing, here's where we're going, and let's get a start on it. But second semester if you haven't done anything up to this point, if you're looking to start new.
I love it. That's good stuff and great information. Before we close out, let's go to these rapid fire questions. The way it works is it's a one-word answer or one sentence max. If you find that you're inserting a comma or commas, then you know you've gone too far. These are rapid fire, boom, 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 bam. Here we go. 21 questions. Like 50 Cent said, 21 questions. Is education on the right path for underserved children?
It could be.
Can true equity occur in America's schools for Black, brown, and other underserved students?
If we're focused.
Does Dr. Marcy Roan's work contribute to the progress we desperately need?
Absolutely.
If you could do a reset on your life, would your line of work be different or the same?
Same, but faster.
Why do you continue to do this work?
Because learning matters for every child.
What fires you up within the work that you do?
Teaching, learning, and coaching.
What do you absolutely love about the work that you do?
When I see teachers that are fired up around teaching, and when I see students that are fired up around learning.
What do you dislike about the work that you do?
Institutional and systemic barriers that make it hard to teach passionately or learning to occur.
What has been your greatest victory in this work to date?
Oh, supporting leaders in creating systems and cultures where great teaching and learning can happen.
What was your greatest mistake in this work?
Thinking that I have to do it alone.
What has been your greatest challenge in this work?
Working with assumptions.
Are you proud of your first year as an assistant principal?
Absolutely.
Are you proud of your first year as a principal?
Yes, because it's given me everything I am to this point.
Who inspires you in this work?
Oh, other great leaders. Other great leaders.
What are you reading right now? Book, blog, article, anything?
I do a lot of Audible, but I'm listening to Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke.
What book would you recommend for our viewers this afternoon?
If you're looking at starting learning rounds, getting a real good understanding, Todd Whitaker's Shifting the Monkey.
That's my guy.
Yep.
Yeah, he's been on here. What do you want to accomplish that you haven't accomplished yet?
Oh, continuing the process of supporting leaders. It's continual. Yeah.
Are you satisfied with where you are professionally now?
Yeah. Yes, I am. But there's always more. There's always room for improvement.
What could you say to a viewer out there who continues to face closed doors?
Focus on becoming and strengthening your instructional leadership, because that's your pivot point from going to the next step.
And what could you say to a viewer out there who's lost their fire?
Go to a classroom, be with some kids. And if that doesn't do it for you, then maybe we need to rethink some other things.
You know, before I go to this last question, and I've never done this in 73 weeks. I've never done this. I got to jump in on that number 20 answer you just gave me. I've never heard anything remotely like that. Hey, y'all, did y'all hear that one? If I said, what could you say to a viewer if you've lost your fire? And Dr. Rhone said, go to a classroom. That's the answer right there, I think. Because if that classroom doesn't fire you up, yeah, you're probably in the wrong business. I've never interrupted these questions before, but that answer got me, man. That answer, go to a classroom. And I mean, if it's your building, and if you go into that classroom and that classroom doesn't fire you up, just the sight of the students alone, then yeah, maybe you're in the wrong business. Maybe you need to find your fire somewhere else, right? Oh man, I never heard that one before. Here we go. Last one. If Dr. Marcy Roan was a word in a dictionary, what would be your definition?
System.
System.
Yep. I'm all about systems.
I hear
That's
that.
how I get everything done.
That's it. System. I like
Anything done.
system. Go in the classroom and system.
Yep.
Good stuff. Hey, Doc, man, this was powerful. And I've been reading these comments all through. And, you know, you said Todd Whitaker, and people on here, they know I tell this story all the time. When I had Todd on, I read comments and I focus on my guests, but I guess I was looking at comments because it was so much rolling with Todd was on. And he asked me a question. And I'm like, what is this guy asking me a question for? I didn't hear, I didn't know what he was saying enough to answer the question. So he put me on the spot. I had to do a Ralph Cramden humming. And I came up with something, but then someone wrote on the thread, this was a great interview, but it would have been better if Principal Kafele was paying attention, right? So yeah, so as we say, it bees that way sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So you know, because I'm producer, I'm host, I'm engineer, I'm everything on here. So you know, but anyway, tell the folks how they can reach you, how they can reach you, to book you, to get your book, to talk to you, social media, that type of thing.
Absolutely. So the book is on Amazon, any major book, Barnes and Noble, that kind of stuff. You'll find that anywhere. You can reach out to me. You can email me at rhonemarcy@gmail.com. It's Rhone Marcy, ROANMARCY @gmail.com. Facebook, you can find me at leadlearners.net, and that's leadlearners.net. Instagram, lead.learners, and webpage, and that's where the webpage, if you purchase the book, the web address is in there so that you can get full-size versions of some of the handouts and things like that I provide to help you out with the process. But you can also go on the web at bit.ly/leadlearnersRhone.
Good stuff. Now the fam out here is reminding me of something that I failed to do because I distracted myself in terms of how we closed out the questions. So now I'll get it right this time, y'all. Hey, folks out there, if you enjoyed the presentation, if it resonated with you, if it was beneficial for you, hit us up with those emojis, which you've all been doing. So those of you who may be new to us, hit us up with the emojis, your favorite emoji, which is our way of applauding our guests. But y'all been doing that for the past 5 minutes. So, you know, you got way ahead of me. So now let me get my emoji, which I use my bat since I wear a baseball jersey. And this is what I use to say, Dr. Rhone, you hit it out the park, grand slam every time you came to bat. So you scored 16 runs, which would be the max at 4 times at bat. This was great stuff, and this is my Louisville Slugger bat that I got from Jefferson County in Louisville school district. So just great stuff, and you all, thank you for being way ahead of me and putting those emojis out. There's a whole lot of them here, man. There's muscles, there's fire, there's diamonds, there's everything is here. So great stuff, and I'm glad folks have that information on how to reach you. So I just want to thank you personally for being here. And
absolutely, and I'm honored to be part of this group. And if there were questions that folks had throughout this interview that they want to hear more about, please reach out to me. I'd love to come help schools and districts with this process, because I really believe in its transformative effect.
Yeah, now I see everything is still those emojis haven't stopped. Hey, y'all, learning rounds with teachers. Get yourself a copy. Go right to Amazon and get yourself a copy, or the other places that Dr. Rhone mentioned. Dr. Rhone, stay with me while I just do the rundown, and then we talk off camera real quick. Folks, to you, appreciate you being here. Appreciate you spending some time with us this morning, as you do every weekend. And those of you who are new, once again, welcome aboard, and don't let this be your last. I want to remind you that I'm going YouTube. At least I'm gonna try it. I want to go straight YouTube. Do it now. Go to the channel AP and New Principals Academy and hit the subscribe button and start now, so I can, so we can shift this thing quickly. But the 7th of October will be the deadline. That'll be week 180. So I want to just bring everybody to one platform, and I'll see how that works. If I don't like it, then we'll move back over to Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, right? So but do that for me. Next week, This will be the first guest that I'm bringing back a second time. We didn't finish the first time, and plus I just want her on here to talk about some back to school leadership items. So that's going to be Dr. LaQuanta Nelson, the boss educator out of Mississippi. That'll be week 174. So join me for Dr. LaQuanta Nelson part 2, week 174. We're going to talk about back to school leadership. Every Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, Sean Hurt, 10 o'clock Eastern time, Sean Hurt, followed by, and this is Facebook Live, followed by Create and Educate with the Leadership Doctors, Dr. Sheikah Houston and Dr. Tammy Taylor, 10:30. Unlock the Middle with Dean Packard and Principal Josh Tovar, 7 o'clock Eastern time. And then the Village Leadership Group with Dr. Roz Gaskins and Coach Williams every Tuesdays and Thursday at 6 o'clock. The Assistant Principal Identity, my newest book. We've been averaging about 1,000 copies a month now. We're a little bit over 3,000 copies, about 3,100 copies. So a little over 1,000 a month. So I appreciate that from everybody on here who has purchased a copy thus far. If you don't have a copy, get yourself a copy. But get this with it, the companion, the Assistant Principal 50, young lady who was a newly appointed assistant principal. She had this picture on her desk, and I wasn't tagged in it. It was just a picture of her sitting at her new desk, and it had this sitting on the desk. So someone else tagged me and let me see the picture, and that warmed my soul in ways that you could never imagine. So to see that there. But with the new principles now, make sure that you get your hands on the Principal 50, right? Critical leadership questions for inspiring classroom excellence. The Aspiring Principal 50 for those of you who aspire to sit in that chair one day. And then the book with the quintessential leadership question, I think, is my school a better school because I lead it? I can't think of a more potent self-reflective question to ask of oneself than that question in your leadership capacity. So go to Amazon, you can get them all there, or ASCD. Join me at the ASCD Leadership Summit. I'll be the opening keynote speaker, general session keynote speaker on October 13 in Grapevine, Texas. So mark your calendar, go to ascd.org to register. And I will see you in Grapevine. We're going to do a book signing. I'm going to do the keynote. Maybe I'll do a breakout. I don't know. We'll see. But I certainly will be bringing the thunder and the lightning to that keynote address. So join me in Grapevine, Texas, October 13 for the ASCD Leadership Summit. Visit principalkafele.com for all my additional resources. Subscribe to the AP and New Principals Academy YouTube channel, and like and follow the AP and New Principals Academy Facebook page. Lastly, your diet, man. You know, I say it every week, and I'm going to keep saying it every week. Make sure you're eating right. You can't lead effectively if you're eating poorly, right? So just make sure that you're eating right. Your exercise, get it in, right? I've been in hotels all week, but guess what? I get to that fitness room. I call it the worst time of my day. It's the worst time and the best time simultaneously. It's the worst time because I don't feel like doing it, but it's the best time because I'm making sure that I can sustain my life, right? So make sure that you are getting yourselves in a gym somewhere, or maybe just outdoors, but doing that cardio work, man. You want to make sure that you are taking care of you physically, because if you don't take care of you physically, you may not be around to take care of them children physically, right? So make sure you're taking care of yourself. COVID-19 precautions, the virus didn't go anywhere. It's here. It just looks like it's not here, but it's here. So make sure that you're making good decisions with that as well. Other than that, thanks for being here. See you next week for week 174 with Dr. LaQuanta Nelson. Until then, those of you who are starting school for the first time this week, have a great week, right? Those of you who already started, continue to have a great school year. But in terms of us, I see you next week. So have a great week. Have an extraordinary week. Have your best week yet. Peace. Peace. Thumbs up. Cock that fist back. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Bam! I see y'all next Saturday, man. But I see you on social media too, because you know I live on social media. So I see you there too.